Welcome back to Rivers and Recurves. Today we're going to be talking about building the perfect hunting arrow. Let's get it. So before we get into building the perfect arrow, it's important to talk about how I aim. So I do what's called gap shooting, meaning I'm drawing back, I'm looking right over the shaft of the arrow, and I'm using the tip of the arrow to aim at my target. Now, I recommend gap shooting to anybody just starting out. You're going to be able to speed up that learning curve quite a bit. So if you go instinctive, which is just pretty much eyeballing it, people compare it to throwing a baseball. You know, you're just getting the reps in, getting the reps in, getting the reps in, until finally your brain memorizes the sight picture. Now, the problem with that is if you're trying to get good with a trad bow fast, it's not possible. It's going to take way too long to get super consistent within 20 yards just shooting instinct. But if you've watched any of my lives, you'll see that we have people who've never shot trad bows before and they're hitting the target within 20 yards that night, and they're doing it consistently. So moving on, when you're gap shooting, it's important to build your arrows so you have a set point on or tip on distance. And what I mean by that is when I draw back and I'm aiming at a target, I have the tip on, and that's where it'll impact at a certain yardage. Now you can change the gap based off of how long your arrows are and how much they weigh. For us today, don't worry about how long your arrows are. Cut your arrows exactly to your draw length. And I already know some of you are gonna have negative opinions about that, and that's fine, I don't care. I'm teaching people my way of doing stuff. So the benefit to doing this is, as you just saw, I'm gonna hit my draw length every single time. One of the top things that beginners struggle with traditional archery is being consistent with their draw length. And cutting your arrows to the exact length they need to be takes that completely out of the equation. So hunting forces us to get into a lot of weird positions, whether we're in a tree stand or a saddle or on the ground. Whatever the case is, we find ourselves in a lot of weird, awkward shooting positions. And that's just what happened in this clip right here. The deer came in and forced me up against the tree. It shortened my draw length by about 2 inches, and I ended up shooting right under this doe. So now we've taken length out of the equation, let's talk about tuning. And we're gonna have to go back to last week. We know there's several ways we can change the spine of an arrow so it still tunes well in our bow. At this point, all we can do is pick a spine and start playing around with the weight at a set length in order to change the spine of that arrow. Now the next tricky part is we also wanna have a decent amount of weight on that arrow. I like my arrows 550 grains and up. I've gone all the way up to 730 grains. Now you certainly don't have to go that high for whitetail hunting, but like I said, 550 to 650 seems to be a sweet spot, at least for me. And what it's also going to do is it's going to help quiet your bow down quite a bit, which is super important in trad bow hunting. So that way you're not getting deer that duck arrows like this. The last thing to talk about are broadheads. Now, a lot of people talk about these VPA 3 blades. They're super popular in the trad community. I'm not really a fan of them. Out of 4 deer shot with them last year, between me and somebody else, we didn't get one good blood trail the entire time. 2 of those shots were pass-throughs, the other 2 were not. I also think you're gonna get the best penetration off a 2-blade broadhead, and that's super important in this game. Now, my recent favorite are these Zwickies. These are the Escalites. They come in at about 135 grains, but they also have the Eskimos, which come in at, I believe, 165 grains. They're a little heavier. Depending on what your needs are, you can go either way with it. While we're doing this, it's important to remember that traditional archery is not about how far you can shoot. It's about how close you can get to that animal. So you really don't want your tip-on distance or point-on distance to be more than 15 to 20 yards. Anything more than that, and you're really gonna have to aim super far underneath the deer to actually hit where you want, and it's gonna throw it off. Now I'm gonna use this target as an example. You want your aim point to be right at the heart every time, but you want your arrow to impact somewhere in the kill zone. And what I mean by that is, if you're tip on or point on at 20 yards, you'll hit right in the heart. If you're at 10 yards, you're gonna impact high, but you want it somewhere in this 8 to 10 inch zone where you're gonna hit the heart or you're gonna hit double lungs, but your aim point on that animal never changes. I will add that you might not get a perfectly tuned arrow during this process, and that's okay. If you can get your arrow at least pretty close and you get something that's, if it's not perfect, it's at least a little weak, that's better than having an arrow that's a little stiff. And after all, that's why we have fletchings on our arrows, to kind of correct some of that inconsistency. So at this point in the series, you pretty much have all of the information that you need in order to go out, buy a bow, buy arrows, tune those arrows, and then make a hunting arrow setup that's going to get you to be successful out there in the deer woods. My next episode in the series will be on my setups in the deer woods and just general hunting tips that I have. Once again, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any tips, suggestions, or even questions, drop below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.